Sir Kannan Gopalakrishnan. He was working as a senior architect at Engineering Design Research Centre, L&T Construction, India's largest construction company. He's also worked on projects ranging from institutional buildings to international airports, apartment complexes to aircraft hangars. He's also attended 3 international conferences and 2 national conferences, and has also presented technical papers at the Jawaharlal Nehru University, Delhi, and the MSRIT, Bangalore. He's also won the national championship at Archaman at the India's largest architecture quiz. Sir Kannan Gopalakrishnan currently runs a design firm, Habitat Design Studio, and he is also a visiting faculty at the renowned architecture schools in Tamil Nadu.
Welcome back to UGC lecture series. This is AR 6502, History of Architecture and Culture 5. This is Unit 2. We are reviewing industrialization in Unit 2. This is lecture number 17. If you remember the previous lecture, we saw the works and life of the great architect Antonio Gaudi. And in this episode, we will be looking at another famous architect, Charles Rennie Mackintosh, and his Glasgow School. And we will be looking at concepts such as Vienna secession and the key proponents of Vienna secession such as Hoffman and Albrecht. Charles Rennie Mackintosh was a Scottish architect, designer and an artist. He was a post-impressionist artist, one of the main representatives of the Art Nouveau movement in the United Kingdom. Some of his famous works includes his famous Mona Lisa masterpiece, the Glasgow School of Art, the Villas Windy-Hill, the Hill House, Scotland Street School, a series of city centre tea rooms. He developed the same Art Nouveau theory which the mainland European architects had at that time, and he added more sophistications into the theory and developed a style of his own. He had a very sharp contrast between the strong right angles on one side and the floral inspired decorative motifs on the other side. So he had a contrast between these two, and he developed his own style of architecture. His work was exhibited at the Vienna secession during the 1900. He won a competition to build the Glasgow School of Art, his first and probably the most important building. This is the Glasgow School of Art, if you are wondering how it looked like. The building is a E-shaped building in plan with corridors along the main spine of the E. The corridor links the major art studios along with the street side and some smaller ancillary rooms and other basic requirements and back offices on the rear side of the E. What Mackintosh did was, he put the big rooms on the far ends of the building. North facade was facing the street, and the east and west ends were having large art studios and rooms, and on the west side he had the big 2-story library, and the whole site was situated at the edge of a steeply sloping site towards the south facing a hill. This is the plan of the building. This is the north facade of the building where it faces the road. Here you can see the corridor which connects all the spaces. This is the main entrance, leads to an entrance hall and a centralized staircase. He has master's room, office rooms, toilets. Here he has junior architecture. This is the ornament room. On the first floor he had designed rooms here and some lecture rooms over here, museum and a 2-story library. On the topmost floor he has embroidery, composition. He has the director's studio on the topmost floor, and he has the personal studios of all the professors here. The built mass of the facade, everything reflect the context in which the building is set. The north facade, like I showed you the pictures, it is a simple horizontal rectangular mass, not a vertical rectangle. It was a horizontal rectangle with large industrial type windows, huge windows which lighted all the studios and all the rooms inside, and it alternates with the masonry piers. The pier, window, pier, window, pier, window. This facade is set behind a stone and iron railing which is interrupted at the center with an Art Nouveau iron arch under which the steps lead up to the main entrance. The steps is situated in an asymmetrical manner because like I showed you in the plan. If it was symmetrical, the entrance should have been here, but instead from here the entrance has moved to here. This is the asymmetrical manner in which he has designed the plan. If you see the pictures, you can see the Art Nouveau arch and the main entrance. This is the north facade, large industrial type windows which are alternating with the piers. Here in this slide you are able to look at the main front elevation of the building. Here you can clearly see that this is the central portion, the main portion of the building, and this is flanked on either sides by all the buildings that he needed to put. And here, instead of putting the entrance here, like I said, he has put it in one corner, and he also has another main arch directly above this, but this main window does not correspond to this center. So he has placed all these elements 1, 2, 3, 4, all these elements in an asymmetrical manner, typically leading away from the neoclassical style of that period. The E-shaped building, I told you that the building is E-shaped, right? So that is not clearly visible from the northern side, from the main facade if you see, but from the south facade, from the rear end, the arms of the E are clearly visible, and it clearly makes a varied composition of assembly rising above the entire cityscape that was Glasgow. These are the interiors of the Glasgow School of Art. He designed the interiors with equal emphasis as that of the exterior itself. The floral motifs, the Art Nouveau geometric forms bring the scale and color to a particular proportion. So it gives a sense of scale and color to all the rooms. May it be the details of the mantelpiece, the lighting, let them be the fixtures, carpets, crockeries, furniture, name it, all these elements are designed properly with Art Nouveau floral and geometric motifs fused together that gives a sense of scale to the entire place, entire room. This darkly furnished wood structure supports the mezzanine floor near the library. A critic once wrote about Mackintosh. His firm belief that construction should be decorated and not decoration constructed. In other words, the salient and the most requisite features should be selected for ornamentation. He applied with great rhythm and inventiveness, especially in these projects such as the Glasgow School of Art, the Scotland Street School, where budgets were severely limited. From this we can clearly see that Mackintosh did not want a decorative piece to be constructed. He clearly wanted the construction to be decorated, and he clearly states in his buildings that projects must arise out of its economy, not by the whim and fancies of an architect. So in Glasgow School of Art and the Scotland Street School, where budgets were highly limited, he created his ingenuity inside architecture. That was what made his name echo through centuries. We're looking at his next building, the Hill House. Hill House is supposedly the largest and one of the finest of Mackintosh's domestic buildings. It was built from local rough cast, rough rendered local sandstone which is available. It clearly looks like a Scottish barren house. He saw that the building was not a single creative act, but a social process. So what he did was, he believed that the original design of the building to suit the changing needs of the client was something which he considered was important. So he must see that the social process should be maintained in the architecture which he is creating. On one side he has the architecture, and on another side he has changing cultures and changing traditions. So he wanted to include all those things. So he kept altering the house while the building progressed itself, when to accommodate a nursery for a new baby, and the new baby was an unexpected addition to the Blackie family. So he kept on revising as per the client's requirement. So that was what made him successful. This is the plan of the Hill House. Simple, straightforward plan with giving lights and ventilation to all rooms. The Willow Tea Rooms are one of the next very important projects of Charles Rennie Mackintosh. The Willow Tea Rooms occupy a narrow infill slot on the Social Street. This is the Social Street, and this is the narrow infill that we are talking about. So This is the shop, and has created a tea room here. He creates the signage of the tea room in this manner. The typeface, the graphic design, the design of the streetscape element itself is done very carefully by Charles Rennie Mackintosh. This 4-story building sits carefully in an urban context with its facade very carefully designed. Gently, the top corners of this building aligns with the 4-story buildings on either sides to make sure that this building does not stand out from the context. The pedestrian and the most public levels are distinguished from the upper private levels with an intermediate cornice in between. If you could see the elevation, this is the top cornice band which gently aligns with the neighboring 4-story buildings, and this is the pedestrian area and the public areas which is clearly distinguished from the private tea rooms by another cornice which he has added in between. Large windows, central windows of the first and second floors contrast deeply with the smaller windows of the third and fourth floors. But in contrast to the neighboring buildings which are heavily detailed, this building is simple and it is stuccoed white rather than giving any other color. This building marks a sense of simplicity in context with the neighboring buildings. This gave the building an elegance and a lightness which is appropriate for the purpose. Mackintosh not only designed the building, the interiors, he also designed the crockery, he also designed the cups which says the Willow Tea Rooms in his very special typeface. We will get into another important concept called the Vienna Secession. It was formed by a group of Austrian artists in the year 1897, who the group included people like painters, sculptors, architects and other creative people. The main idea of Vienna Secession was to reject all the revivalist styles, because they were neoclassical revivalism, they were Gothic revivalism, classical revivalism, Baroque revivalism, a lot of styles which had existed previously in the previous centuries were now getting revived by the architects. So, these people, the secessionists, they rejected all these revivalist styles and contradicting the popular belief that existed during that particular time period. The conservative academies, the people who were running the show, they were endorsing all the revivalist styles, but these people were the people who were set apart themselves and they started rejecting all these styles. These people were trying to promote an art that would celebrate modernity. The secessionist trend appeared in several cities across Europe, beginning in Munich in AD 92. There were no unifying characteristics between the Viennese secessionist painting or sculpture or architecture, and there were no great sense of unifying character between the secessionists that happened in multiple cities, but they were committed to one thing: modernizing art by getting in touch with the latest modern art movements. In Austria, in Vienna Secession, the aim was to promote modern Australian art by acquainting themselves with the latest trend in art movements. There were two people who were very key and instrumental behind the Vienna Secession. One of them was Joseph Hoffmann. Let us take a look at some of the projects that he has designed. The Moser House and the Stocklet Palace were some of the buildings that he designed. This is the Moser House and this is the Stocklet Palace. If you see in his buildings, you can clearly see the way in which he has tried to reject any revivalist style that could have influenced this building. He rejected everything and then he followed the latest trend in art and architecture at that particular point of time in Vienna. So, that is when he was able to produce this kind of architecture. The buildings were marked by double-story high sitting rooms, clear white interiors, occasionally disturbed only by elements that are necessary for the building. The elements which are necessary for the building are often decorated. Just like Mackintosh said in Glasgow, these people were trying out Pretty much the same thing in Vienna. They started decorating the construction, and they didn't construct anything that was mere decoration. So this was the result of their movement. Another important proponent of Vienna secession was Joseph Maria Albrecht. And Joseph Maria Albrecht designed a very interesting building called the Secession Building. Why Secession Building is important, I'll tell you all the key features of Secession Building. Before we get into that, this is how the building looks. Simple plain building with a dome. On either side of the entrance, on either side of the steps, you have this element that is flanking the entrance steps. One of the key elements of the building which Joseph Maria Albrecht designed. Take a look at some more pictures of the Secession Building. Plain square building with a part of it constructed on the first floors too, surmounted by a dome. Simple white, plain white colors with a golden color dome. Decor that was art of that particular time period, not of any previously existing style. A new style was born along with this building. So let us look at the story of this Secession Building. All the secession members gathered, and they gave the commission to the then hardly 30-year-old architect Joseph Maria Albrecht. Albrecht at that time was working along with Otto Wagner. When he was working in Otto Wagner's atelier, the secession members gathered and they wanted Albrecht to build their new secession building. When Albrecht finished his design, the design was met with very violent reaction on the part of the municipal council. So there were constant problems that the municipal council created, which Albrecht had to fight and retain some of his design concepts. So there was a lot of things that were going on. It took more than 9 months for the building to be designed, which was actually built in less than 6 months. But immediately during the wars, the building was almost completely destroyed, and during the Second World War, when the German troops were retreating, they set the building on fire. This building was adapted and renovated a lot of times in the due course of its life. During the 100-year period, this building was renovated a lot of times. If you look at the ground floor plan of the building and the cross section of the building, it reveals that the building is entirely made up of very simple geometric forms. If you look at the massing of the building, what happens was unbroken planes. There are planes over planes, horizontal and vertical planes, that dominate the entire exterior of the building. These massive unbroken walls are actually lending the exterior the appearance of being constructed by a series of solid cubes. So it makes the whole building look like a cube, and then 2 cubes over here and a cube on top with a dome on top. This entrance area is decorated by 3 gorgons, the masks of gorgons. They each symbolize architecture, sculpture and painting respectively. This is done right above the main entrance arch. Let us come to the main and the most dominating feature of the building. So it has one cube on the ground floor, it has another little cube on the first floor, and on top of that, what makes this building look so great is the laurel leaf dome right on top of the building. So that is the most dominant symbol in the building. It hovers over the building in the form of spear, which is actually made up of 3000 little leaves and 700 berries. If you could see here, these are the laurel leaves, and you can also see some of the berries in this picture. This is the center of the dome. Today if you go to Austria, Vienna is the capital of Austria. Even today if you go to the country, any tourist guide will take you to this building and show you what this building is made up of. Not just to an architect, but even to a public point of view, the Secession Building marks or represents a very important point of history in Viennese architecture and the culture of Vienna itself. So that is why even if any tourist who goes to Austria, the secession building will definitely be a part of their wish list to see. Today, this building is being seen and visited by a lot of people and being appreciated by a lot of people, and we even talk about it, even we talk about it right now. But during the time when this building was constructed, this building faced a lot of criticism. This building was called Temple of Bullfrogs, temple for the anarchic arc movement. It was called a mausoleum. It was called a pharaoh's tomb, the grave of the Mahdi, a crematorium. The dome was criticized as the head of a cabbage. The entire building was called in the newspapers a bastard between temple and a warehouse, a cross between a greenhouse and a blast furnace. These are some of the worst things that could happen to an architect and a building. But always remember, there is another lesson, important lesson in this particular example. You are what you believe, and your design is what you believe in your head is correct. When you're designing a building, and if you really think that this is going to be the future, this is going to be the correct answer, the solution to the architectural problem that we have here, if we strongly have that kind of a belief on a piece of architecture or an idea, we should very, very strongly get attached to the idea. And even if there is going to be so much criticism about that particular idea or architecture, we should learn to survive those comments. Only then we can earn timelessness. Joseph Maria Olbrich here is a very fine example of that. He withstood the protests from the municipal committee. He withstood the protests from the public. He withstood protests from the press and any art critic and architecture critic of that particular point of time. He withstood the test of time. He passed the test of time, and today he stands proud and tall with his building adapted and renovated so many times, which is right now one of the most important landmarks in Austrian architecture, even world architecture for that matter. There is a very, very important lesson here, ladies and gentlemen. Never lose hope to criticism. There will always be critics, and there will always be good architects. Joseph Maria Olbrich was one example. This is another building which is designed during the secessionist period. Here too, you can take a look at the gentle geometry, rectangles, squares, massing of squares and rectangles, long windows and contrastingly sharp windows on the ground floor. Look at the pattern of grills everywhere, typical Vienna secession going on. With this, we come to an end of this episode. Let's take a look at what we saw in this episode. We understood the works and life of the famous architect Charles Rennie Mackintosh and his Glasgow school. We also understood the contribution of Joseph Hoffman and Joseph Maria Olbrich towards Vienna secession. We tried to understand the secessionist architecture through various examples, and we also saw the spirit of Joseph Maria Olbrich and his building. With this, you should be able to answer the following questions which are going to appear on your screen right now. Explain the architectural character of Mackintosh with sketches. Explain the Glasgow School of Art with sketches. Explain the Vienna secession building with sketches explaining the positive and negative comments with the building received. Who are the key proponents of Vienna secession? We are almost at the end of unit number 2 with just the works of Frank Lloyd Wright, the greatest American architect ever lived, remaining. So we will take a look at the works and life of famous architect Frank Lloyd Wright in the next episode. Until then, thank you.